Hey, everybody.
Mhm.
Today I have with me Carolyn Martin, and I've asked her to join me to talk about publicly funded enrichment programs and academic support programs within Colorado and the homeschool scene. And I spent time talking with Carolyn years ago, one in a homeschool group that I was a part of, and then when I was going to the Capitol to fight against legislation that I didn't like. And she has been super heavily involved in advocating for homeschool rights and parental rights and religious freedom in Colorado for a long time. And so I just value her perspective and her wisdom that she has earned the hard way going through the things she has in Colorado. And so I've asked her to come on with me. And so with that, welcome, Carolyn. And if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit about yourself and your experience, and then we can get into the questions that I have for you.
Yeah, thanks, Colleen, for having me. I started homeschooling my three kids in New York State, the most regulated state in the nation. So when I came here to Colorado, I really wanted to know how do we stay free? What's going on? I kind of came into homeschooling after the pioneers were already established, right? And then when I met Trion, who was the lady who co-authored the law here in Colorado and started getting involved with that, I ended up lobbying up at the Capitol for years. And then the last 2 years, I've been working with legislators, helping them with policy on a wide range of things. So that's kind of where I'm coming from.
What year did you start homeschooling? Did you say and I missed it? I'm
No,
sorry.
I didn't say. It was in the early 2000s.
Early 2000s. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. So
yeah,
you've been doing it a while. You've seen a lot.
yeah, yes,
Okay. All
yes.
right. So we'll just jump into my first set of questions. And the first three are about the background, your background when you're coming from, and your core concerns around publicly funded programs. So here's my first question. You've opposed publicly funded homeschool programs for a long time. What originally concerned you about them?
Yeah, and I want to lay out a little bit of a foundation because we need to understand that our country was founded on Judeo-Christian biblical values. And one of those is the family is central, right, to a society, that the family is central. So that means parents have the responsibility, duty, and authority to raise up their children. Well, that is not the way that the legislature thinks of our children today. Okay. The majority of them do not think parents are the ones who should be raising their children. So we need to come from that perspective, right? And before the early 1900s, we didn't have the education we see today, right? We have this compulsory attendance law that forces everyone to go to the public school. So we didn't have that. That was a new invention in the modern world, this idea of public education. So we need to come from our understanding of what's happening today from that perspective to know some history, right? It took really courageous families to get our homeschool law to say, we want to homeschool our kids because that's what God says. We're the authority. We want to educate them how we see fit. And they were even threatened with jail time. Colorado was in the top 10 worst states to homeschool. The school district could deny your ability to educate your children at home. And a lot of them, most of them did. And some of them threatened jail if you didn't get them in the school. So that's the kind of background that we come from. And I want to read to you something that Trian, who I told you was one of the co-authors of the law, she said in the beginning when homeschooling started in 1988. And this is probably written in the 90s, but she said the public school system wants the public, including parents, to believe that it's all homeschooling. So when you make their move to eliminate the control of parents over their independent homeschools and thrust them back under the state control, it will appear to be the most natural thing to do. And she's talking about the part-time programs because originally these part-time programs were just the public schools set aside a room and they had part-time programs where homeschoolers came in. They let us go. It's like, okay, we'll let you go, like Pharaoh, let
Hmm.
them go, right? But we really want you back. So we're going to set up this program, and because you're going to see, you need us. We want you back. So that was the the environment that everything was happening in. And Treon saw that what they were trying to do was pull us back in. That's what they were trying to do. So from the beginning, this wasn't about freedom. It was about pulling us back in, right? I've been trying to research how did that specific language to allow us to go to the public school get in there? Because it was from the beginning that that was there. And I'm like, who put that in? What was the compromise that allowed that to be in our law? So anyway, that's kind of originally my concern with it is they really want us back. They want us to be under their control. And so you need to know that history as you go into it. You also need to know that when you go to the public school, you're a public school student. Even if it's just part-time and you're filing your NOI or you're a part of an independent school, it doesn't matter. You're still a public school student. They have control over you. Once you cross that threshold, there is some control there. And I know there's this one guy who runs a part-time program up in St. Vrain. He even turns homeschool students in who don't attend his class, for truancy. So some parents think, oh, this is just an optional program. I don't really need to follow, attendance to these programs. Well, yes, you do, because now you're a part of the public school system, and you could be charged with truancy if you don't show up to their part-time program, without an excuse. Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah. I do. Do you think that's a common thing or do you think that's an
no,
anomaly?
I think that's a more an anomaly, but it gives you a picture that that guy is more on the fringe of wanting
Mm,
total control over homeschoolers, right? He wants all
yeah.
of the homeschoolers in his district to register with him, regardless if they use the program or not. So,
Mm,
so it's an anomaly, but it shows the direction. And I guess as I've worked at the legislature these past few years, we've gotten more and more really devout Marxist in there, really devout. I mean, we're not talking just socialists who want some socialist programs. We're talking Marxists. So I think things are moving in that direction, and that's what we need to be aware of. We need to know what our history is. We need to know where it's going. And I
hmm
guess that was my point in sharing that. So we got to take the long view, realize that freedom requires sacrifice and must always be defended. It's not always going to be there if we don't defend it.
hmm Yeah, I have two things I want to respond with on that. The first one is a question. I guess it's comment. So, since I have an umbrella school and I support homeschoolers all over Colorado, I hear things from all over Colorado. And there are some programs where people are in charge of them and they are fierce advocates for homeschooling freedom. And there's some really good people running them. But then there are other programs, it sounds like this one that you mentioned, where they don't understand homeschooling. They don't respect homeschoolers or the parents as a primary educator. They don't really respect those rights. In fact, I spoke with a guy who was in charge of one of the homeschooling groups. And when I was talking with him, asking him what his vision was, because he had just taken over the program, he said that he thought parents should come in and meet with him with their curriculum so that they could show him what they were doing. And then he would tell them what they were doing well and what they needed to improve. And I was like, whoa, this, like, you're crossing lines that aren't yours to cross.
Yes.
But if somebody's going there, they're kind of giving that permission if they decide they want to go that way with their homeschool. So that's a something to consider. So that was just a comment. My other question that I did want to ask, I'd like for you to speak to, is when homeschooling was illegal, when people would decide they were going to homeschool anyway, and they were breaking the law to homeschool, like to do it, underground. What did that look like for those families? How did they live out their daily lives trying to do that?
Yeah, and even me coming on the heels of some of those pioneers. I mean, when my kids were little, I'm like, don't answer the door. Don't answer
Mm.
the phone. So to this day, they won't answer the door. They won't answer the phone. They learned really well.
Right,
Don't
right.
do that. I mean, I had a home phone then and I just recently got rid of it. But I mean,
Mm.
that kind of stuff was what they did. They had escape plans on, hey, if somebody comes, this is where you are to go out the back door, go to this, person, because they knew their kids were in danger of being taken from them.
Mm.
And really, I mean, there is a bill that came out this year that could create that kind of scenario, not in homeschooling itself, just in family court, which is troubling to me. So you've got to see the trajectory of how everything is moving in this direction of total control and them not respecting the family at all, which I'm saying is our foundational principles.
Is that
So,
bill in Colorado? That bill was brought in
yes,
Colorado. And did it pass?
yes, yes,
W
absolutely.
Which bill was it? And what did it
This
do?
was 1309. It was talking about, it was supposed to be about domestic abuse, but they added children in there. And it talks about it redefines what coercive control is. And coercive control can be defined as you monitoring your child's phone, computer, whatever, watching over them, controlling some of their tech. I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm controlling tech. If I'm giving you tech, I'm controlling it
It's a
as a
parent's
parent.
responsibility. Yeah.
Yeah, but you're not allowed to do that. Or having any threat to their identity, which in this case, in
Mm-hmm.
this world, means anything to do with gender identity. So,
Mm-hmm.
so our rights are being squashed. I mean, they could then use that your control, coercive control over your child to take visitation rights and parental authority away from you.
I can see
If
how that
you
would be a
end
big.
up in family court, which a lot of families end up there, right? So we've got to be really careful, protect the
How do
family.
most families in Colorado end up in family court?
Well, I mean, I didn't say most, but a lot of them do because
No, I'm just
of
saying, how do most families
divorce. It's
land
either through
their
divorce or
divorce?
maybe um, neglect. Neglect
Okay,
is a nebulous word. It's not
right.
defined anywhere in law. And so, so those kind of situations, anytime you're dealing with CPS, Child Protection Services,
So based
can
on that
land you
law,
in family court.
based
Hmm.
on that law and what you said it provides, what I'm hearing and interpreting in my own mind is that could easily be used as a support for a potential homeschool law if it dictated what kind of curriculum had to be taught or what standards had to be met. And if you use something outside of that, like let's say they don't want people to be teaching their religions to their children. And if you didn't use state approved curriculum and you used your own like biblically based curriculum, they could say that's coercive, that's abusive, and they could, cause problems for families under that context. Is it a stretch for me to jump to that conclusion to think that that could be used later down the road in bad ways against homeschoolers?
Well, yeah, I think because it rubs up against their ideology, right? When
Mm-hmm.
we're talking about the whole civil rights and discrimination stuff
Mm-hmm.
around the LGBTQ and things that, or even just biological sex, or I'm trying to think of the other thing,
It's
of
really
whether
any
it's
topic.
abortion, because
Yeah.
yeah, or vaccines or any of that stuff, you rub
Mm-hmm.
up against their ideology. Yes, they'll let you have your religion as long as it doesn't change their ideology and it doesn't
And
rub up
potentially
against
if you're
that.
not teaching your kids counterintuitively, right? Because there are
Yes.
there are places, okay, tell me if let me back up so I say this right. Are there any places that you know of in the world right now that either has current legislation or is working towards legislation where if parents have curriculum or are teaching something in their homeschool that goes against modern ideology regarding controversial topics, that homeschool curriculum is not allowed?
Well, I mean, I think let's take, for instance, there was the bill to talk about the scholarship group, whatever
Hmm.
the tax credit thing, right? So in that bill, it said you can't discriminate. So they use discrimination as a way to bring in their ideology, right?
Hmm.
So you
Hmm.
can't discriminate against the transgender, whatever, but that means you have to teach that that is normal, that
Hmm.
that is, you know, the standard and everything else. And they're saying they in that bill, which didn't pass, it said that those scholarship granting organizations couldn't give money to schools that didn't abide by that.
Hmm.
So in that way, because it was for homeschoolers as well, that they
Oh,
could get these scholarships that and in that way they could restrict, right? So it's not always an frontal assault.
yeah,
And that's
yeah.
why I'm saying that you've got to look at all these other things, the other pieces that are at work.
I think
So,
Colorado legislators and the powers behind them are very crafty the way they go about things, and it's rarely a frontal assault. I feel like what they do is they watch carefully what other states are doing and have done, and then they implement slowly by chipping things away, and then they kind of go in for the jugular when they've chipped away for a while, is how I perceive it to be. Am I off base on that?
well, no, and even this 1309, which we were talking about coercive control, that was in last year's 1312. Well, it got defeated because so many people were like, what? What are you doing? That
Mm,
was, oh, okay, well, we'll wait until next year when you're not paying
hmm.
attention and we're just going to slip it in this bill. And there you go.
Yeah.
And they were trying to tell people it's not that bad. It's not like it was. No, it's kind of worse, actually. So, yeah, that's what they do. I mean, this year they've introduced some really, crazy bills. Oh, we'll back off. Yeah, we're not going to do that. But it'll be back.
Hmm.
So, I mean, I've seen it over and over again. So, yeah, they figure out another way to do it.
And they come
Um,
from another angle
they come from
and
another
just
angle,
slide
or they
something
stick it
else
in,
in.
slide it in some other bill, just like the
Yeah.
School Finance Act, which we will talk about. It was an amendment there
Hmm.
because if they
Hmm.
had brought a regular bill on it, there would have been a lot of opposition and the governor might not have signed it, So there's
Hmm.
all this political stuff, their games they're playing.
Man, we could talk about that for hours, couldn't
Yeah,
we?
I know. Sorry.
No, I mean,
Get you off on a rabbit
I want
trail.
to go down this rabbit trail with you, but I don't want to derail. And I know you have things to do with your day, but I would maybe I could get on your schedule again so we could go down some rabbit trails. Okay, so let's go on to my next one. Wow, from your perspective, what changed in Colorado homeschooling over the last several years that eventually led to this change in legislation?
Yeah, and so I'm only going to take the last several years because we could go back even longer. But
Sure.
I think there are three things that kind of collided with them at the legislature. And with CDE, with the Colorado Department of Education. In 2023, they have a auditing schedule that they audit every school program, whatever, over a certain amount of time. So they don't do it every year. So the time was up for these particular part-time programs to be audited. And when they were auditing it, they're like, wait a minute, we've got a problem here. They found out that these programs weren't following the rules and the guidance. I mean,
Mm.
maybe they didn't even know there were rules and guidance out there that CDE puts out, but they weren't
Right.
following them.
Hmm.
So they got into trouble for that, for some technical things. But then one of these programs was also funding directly homeschoolers. Well, that's not allowed under the rules.
Mm-hmm.
And the legislature has given broad authority to the state board of education to make rules around any law that they pass. You got to know that. It's
Hmm.
not just about what the law says, it's about what the rules and regulations say that you have to follow. They also found out that there was no direct licensed teacher oversight of some of the students in these programs. Well, that's a mandatory thing that has to happen. You have to have these licensed teachers doing it. And there's a whole problem with licensed teachers because we know those programs, I mean, that was what started our whole move toward compulsory education. They couldn't get compulsory education in the early days because the states are like, no, 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 we're fine, leave us alone. We're not doing this. But so they decided to go, okay, we'll get a hold of all the teachers. We're going to teach them all the same stuff. And then we're going to send them out. And through that way, we're going to control what's being taught to children. So anyway, these licensed teachers, it's still the same thing. I've talked to young teachers. I mean, not all of them are brainwashed, but I'd say a lot of them are into a mindset that really is socialistic.
Hmm.
And some of them, I've talked to young, I mean, these are 20-some-year-old teachers, right? They're like, I'm the expert. You don't know anything about your kids. I'm like, really? Okay, you don't even have kids. You're still a kid yourself,
Right.
but this is what they've taught them. This expert class, now you're the
Mhm.
expert. And
Mhm.
so this is a problem with these part-time programs, but CDE says you've got to have them. If we're going to pay for it, you've got to have those teachers. So that was number one. There were three things that collided. That was number one, these audits. Number two is the federal government started looking at a lot of things in Colorado, and they actually looked at their own programs like SNAP, right? They put some requirements on SNAP. Well, that decreased the funding that was going to happen in Colorado, right? So the
Mhm.
budget shrank for Colorado. And during COVID, when the federal government was handing out all this money for COVID, restoration stuff, they propped up all these programs using that money across all their agencies. They propped up a bunch of socialist programs, and that money shrank when the Trump administration came in. They're like, nope, that's done. They figured if it was a Democrat president, that funding would continue forever. So
Mhm.
no, it was cut. So they had a budget problem. The last 2 years, they've had significant budget problems. And so you couple that with the growth of these part-time programs that came out of COVID. There was a movement to try to get the school choice funding. They couldn't get vouchers, so they were going to get the growth of these part-time programs where they could, some of them, funnel money down to homeschoolers just outright. So those three things collided, and really it was about the budgetary stuff, right? So all of
Mhm.
that collides, and them realizing that these programs aren't abiding by our rules, it all collided, and then this is what we get.
Mm.
So that's where we're at.
Oh, that gave me so many thoughts and more questions and things we could talk about. I'm trying to think if any of them are worth bringing up or if I should just keep my mouth shut. Here's one I think that's worth talking about. Since CDE gets to make a lot of rules, do you anticipate we could see changes for homeschoolers who file NOIs in as far as like regulations or what they provide outside of what the homeschool law provides? Could they require more through rule changes when people are participating in programs?
They could, but I'm not hearing them talking about that. Like in their meetings, the
Mhm.
staff themselves are kind of leery of doing that. Could it be the state board of ed? That's a whole different thing because you do have some activists on that state board. But at this point, I don't see them doing it without having a law telling them to do it.
Mm.
Do you know what I mean? But it
Hmm.
doesn't mean they won't recommend we need a law to do this, because
Okay.
often the agencies will do that. They will want to do something, they'll tell the legislature, give us a law so we can do this. Right
Mm.
now, that's outside the bounds of the law, so they'd
Hmm.
have to change it. So we need to watch that. But this is right now, if you go on the CDE website and you look for numbers about homeschooling, they'll just tell you these are the homeschoolers who follow, the homeschool law, but don't get any funding. That's the number you'll find. And it's just an aggregate number. Schools right now, all they do is report an aggregate number. This is how many NOIs we got. There you
Hmm.
go. But if they're getting funding, they separate them out. And now they've started putting that data up there. How many homeschoolers are actually in these part-time programs, which they didn't used to put up on their website.
Hmm.
So now they're starting to do that. And with this new law, they will have the ability to get access to the NOIs. Right now, they
Hmm.
don't, and they
Hmm.
don't really care. They don't have enough staff. Thank you for the Taxpayer Bill of Rights. They don't have enough staff to be able to probably do everything they would love to do with us.
Mm. So
So keep that
I
in
wonder
mind.
if they're tracking more than we realize because what I've
Mhm.
noticed over the past 2 years, and I've talked to other umbrella school owners who have seen the same thing, we will get requests for confirmation of enrollments for kids from a year or even 2 years ago.
Right, and that's the private school law. So that's different than the NOI, right?
Yeah,
So
well,
you're
they know
saying it
that.
crosses over to the
No, I'm not talking
NOI.
about NOI. I'm talking about when a parent withdraws their child from school and they
Okay.
say, I'm enrolling them in this private umbrella school. And then they'll ask for a COE from us. And we say, yes,
Gotcha.
we have them. And then that makes them complete the withdrawal process at their school, the disenrollment process. And so they're tracking still where kids are going and if they are going to private umbrella schools. And they're doing it up to 2 years, I've seen, after the parents have withdrawn their children. Like, and I've pushed back saying, this was
Wow.
2 years ago. Why are you asking for me for this now? Like, so clearly
And what was their answer?
they
Yeah.
just said, oh, we're required to get this. I don't even think they know. I think what the verbiage I have received from
Interesting.
multiple schools who are doing this, because it's not just one, is
Yeah.
I was told I have to do this. I don't think they even understand why. I don't think that they have any idea, but it sounds to me like they were given a directive to
Hmm.
go back and track down where kids went. And maybe it has nothing to do with umbrella schools. Maybe it does have something to do with umbrella schools. I don't know. But I know that it was very suspicious to me. And I've pushed back on every single one of them saying this should have been done within 14 days of the withdrawal. That's what state law says. The state law does not
Hmm.
provide anything 24 months later for you to be asking for this information. Like that,
Yeah,
something's
that's
not sitting
interesting.
right with me on that. You know what I mean? So, and
Wow.
I'm speculating on what they could be doing with the data, but I know
Yeah.
that it's odd that they're following up that much later. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Okay. My last question for the first one. At the heart of your concern, what do you believe happens when government funding becomes connected to homeschooling? Maybe that's a little bit
Well,
redundant of a
I think
question.
what I was saying before that Trion quote about everybody, it's just homeschooling. That's homeschooling. So
Mhm.
everybody needs to just go to the school. I mean, one of the laws they were trying to get passed in New Jersey was that you go into a public school and meet with a public school person every year. Why? Don't we have freedom? I want true freedom. But
Yeah.
anyway, but the thing is, I mean, you always hear what the government funds, the government controls, or he who funds it holds the key. It's true.
Mhm.
It's
Mhm.
the truth. And so that's the problem is how much control will spill over. I mean, you're already starting to see some of it. You're getting asked questions you never got asked before. And
Oh, and
data is key for them.
data is key, especially in Colorado, and they love databases in Colorado, I feel. I feel like that's a big thing for the Colorado government. They want data, they want tracking, they want to be able to look and sum it all up. Oh gosh, there was something I just thought of that I wanted to say. Oh, the it's a and it's a deeper principle of truth. This isn't just about government funding. Anywhere who has the money, they have the control, right?
It's true.
If you're a parent and you give money to your kids to do something with it, like this is money to buy groceries. They're in college, you send them grocery money and then they go get alcohol with it. Are you going to be mad? Right? Like
Yeah,
if you are giving
absolutely.
money, and it's in the Bible. I know a lot of people, the
Mhm.
families that I support, they're not all Christians and I respect it. It's fine. People can do whatever they want, but there are some just foundational truths in the world where the person who has the money controls it. If you go to, I said this to the person that I interviewed who's in favor of publicly funded programs. If you go to the bank to get a loan to buy a car, you can't take that money and go to Disney World with it. Like there are rules and regulations no matter where you are, who has the
Yes.
money gets to determine the things, right?
Well, even I was thinking, even on our phones, the free apps, well,
Oh,
there's still conditions, right? They're still tracking you
they're
and
taking
using
your
your data
data. Yeah.
and just, ruining your privacy, but you agreed to it. Either
You're
you
absolutely
agree to it
right.
or you don't get the app. So
Right.
you have to decide.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
so the more government oversight of some people, the more scrutiny on the entire community. Like when they were auditing this one program, they said the CDE said, "Hey, we want proof that you're giving this quality education that you say you're giving." So the program had parents send in proof that they were doing education, and one person sent in a picture of their kid jumping on a trampoline. That's why I get paid to do PE. I'm like, this doesn't look good on the rest of our community, right?
Hmm.
I'm not saying that parent wasn't actually doing PE, but it's we need to be careful what we're giving them and what the impression we're giving them of who we are, right?
Especially in a world that puts so much stress on equity.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. It's a good point.
And yeah, we need to think about the implications of what we're saying and we're doing and how we're presenting ourselves. It's frustrating when people make the homeschool community look bad.
Yeah.
And people don't think through the fact that there are homeschoolers who are digging in and doing the hard things every day. And, I don't think in my life we have ever had a 4 hour homeschool day, right? Like when people say how long do you take to homeschool until we're done? Maybe that's three
So
o'clock in the
true.
afternoon, rare. Maybe that's 4 o'clock in the afternoon, often 5 o'clock, maybe sometimes even 8 o'clock at night. You
Hmm.
know what I mean? Like you do what you do to get it done. It's not a joke. It's really serious. People have sacrificed to give us the laws to be free that we have right now. And people are sacrificing everything to give their kids good education and to empower them to be who they were made to be. And it's not a joke.
So true.
I feel like sending a picture of a kid jumping on a trampoline saying PE and clapping themselves on the back, that's really insulting. That offends me because we
Yeah.
work hard to do what we do.
Hmm.
Okay.
Absolutely.
The bill and government oversight. What parts, I guess, if any, what parts of SB 26023 concern you the most?
Yeah, I mean, it's not really the bill itself.
Yeah.
It's what concerns me is what comes next. And that's kind
Hmm.
of twofold. What's going to happen with the legislature and how they're going to take in this, because there is another bill that talks about sending a report to the Joint Budget Committee. So gathering data. So they've got data there. You've got the rules and regulations that are come out for these part-time programs. What are they going to look like? So you've
Hmm.
got that. But then what's the response of the community, the homeschool community? I mean, I'm just seeing either there's fear out there or they're saying this is my right. And I'm like, no, it's not. And
Yeah.
so I think it's trying to get us kind of on the same page so that we understand the history and the future, where this
Hmm.
is going and really getting on that same page. I don't know how to do that. I mean, I've been trying to do that for a decade, but
Hmm.
haven't been able to do that. Um,
Why do you think that's hard to do?
well, it became harder, when people came out of COVID, right? Because I think it's because they saw what the public school was doing and they knew that was wrong,
Hmm.
what they were teaching them. And so they wanted something different, but they don't know really what homeschooling is. It's not
Hmm.
just another educational choice. It's a
Right.
whole lifestyle, right?
Yeah.
Change. It's a shift, a major shift in thinking about education, family, that I don't think they grasp
And
fully yet.
jurisdictional lines. Right.
Absolutely. Yes, authority.
I've been thinking for a while that there's really not a lot of true homeschoolers left in Colorado. I feel like pure, authentic homeschooling is definitely in the minority now. And I feel like it doesn't help us to call everybody homeschoolers. I feel like we should come up with new definitions, right? Like there are
Hmm.
homeschoolers, and that's where the education is happening at home. And then there's like part-time public schoolers who maybe they do part-time in the public school and maybe they do part-time at home. And then there's legit hybrid, and then there's alternative education. I feel like we should redefine things a little bit. And I feel like maybe that if we could redefine things, maybe it would help in future legislation because everything's all about definitions and how you define things, right? Like,
Yeah, and that does concern me, I guess, about the bill. That is one of my
hmm.
concerns about that bill because they use the word homeschool and they use
Right.
the word microschool, but they don't really define it.
Yeah.
I think for homeschool, they're trying to tie it to the non-public home-based educational law,
Hmm.
but I don't know. I get concerned. You're right. No. And we've had this problem since the early 90s when people were doing online programs, right?
Right.
They're totally doing online public school, but they were calling themselves homeschoolers. I'm like, you're
Yeah.
not a homeschooler. So
It's
we've
not the
had
same.
that problem from the beginning and we'll continue to have it. And it's not about purity. I mean, people would say, oh, it's a purity test. No, it's about where do you fall in the law? Where are you following?
Hmm.
Which comes with it regulations and rules. Our homeschool law doesn't come with all those regulations and rules. It's self-contained, right?
Hmm.
But like even with the private school law, there are other sections of law that impact it, right? Like you've got to have if you were going to set up a private school in your home, you would have to follow, certain fire regulations and
Hmm.
stuff like that, right?
And
So there's
health
different
regulations and get
so it's
vaccine
a whole
records. Yeah.
different, yeah, it's a whole different set of laws. Whereas the homeschool law, very self-contained, and
Hmm.
it's about freedom, and that's where I want to keep it. And that's why later on you asked me this question, but I just want to bring it in here. Why is that so important? Because that is the freedom. That's where we're going to
Hmm.
get our total freedom from is the NOI and keeping it pure that. So I don't know. We've had that problem and always we talk about that. How do we define it? What's the best way to do it? I think we've tried to use the term independent homeschooler to try to differentiate between those who are
Mm.
using those part-time programs
Yeah.
or using even online curriculum that's mandated by, or that's controlled by the state.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I usually try to say independent or autonomous. That's my word for
there you
it.
go. I
Autonomous
like that.
homeschooling. And then it's, completely under your own authority. And at the same time, like I fully believe that it's the parents' responsibility, not just right, but responsibility. Responsibility is heavy. I don't use it lightly to say, oh, it's your right to do whatever you want. It's also your responsibility to protect and advocate for your family and look down the road and do what you need to do for your kids, even when it's hard and maybe they don't understand it and
Hmm.
maybe they don't like it. But to say, I love you, I'm your parent, and sometimes I just have to say what goes. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
I've had some families, I had one, this mom, it broke my heart. She was devastated. Her daughter was struggling in school. She was having a terrible time. She withdrew her from school, enrolled her in our umbrella school. One day she made it. One day. And then she
Mm.
emailed, she said, like, my daughter's crying. She has to go back to school. She doesn't want to do this. And
Mm.
the
Yeah.
poor girl, she was having like mental health complications from what was happening at school. And like she just needed her mom to stop and take care of her and to do the tough thing. And the mom, it broke her heart too much and she couldn't cope with having her daughter cry and like standing up to her. And so after one day, I'm like, it can take somebody a year.
Yeah.
I've been homeschooling for 14 years now, and I'm still sometimes like, wow, we need to get a grip here. I don't, where's my footing? I
Exactly.
don't know what's going on right now, but to not, you can't do it quickly. It takes time. As parents, you are responsible to just make the tough calls for your family and to do things, even if your kids don't understand it, if that's what you're convicted to do. Like I'm not telling any parent what to do in their homeschool. Till to my dying breath, I will not ever try to tell a parent what to do with their family or their homeschool, but I will tell people they need to think hard and they need to understand the full weight of everything that they're doing and take the responsibility because we're accountable for our families and our children, what we do with them, where we put them, and looking down the road to be wise about what's coming so that we can properly advocate and protect our children and our families. So, anyway,
I
sorry
know. And
for that
that's why, I
tangent.
mean, the things that you're talking about, though, like parents being responsible and having that authority, that is not welcomed
No,
in
it's
this
fighting
state.
words. It's fighting
So,
words, right?
yeah. So we really have to have the conviction that that is something that we are supposed to do. And that's a
Hmm.
right we're going to have to fight for
Hmm.
as well. And so these are hard days coming, and that's what we need to realize. Yeah.
I don't have
Because
to.
parent that child could tell on the parent and then you're done. And they don't even know the ramifications of them saying things to teachers, to counselors. Oh,
Oh,
they're more than ready to take your child away from you.
and a kid can hear something online, not even fully understand what it is they're saying,
Absolutely.
and then think that they understand a little bit, especially kids who are on the spectrum. They might hear
Yes.
something that's being said and they might parrot it because that's what a lot of kids
Mm-hmm.
on the spectrum do. And they don't fully understand things and could make an accusation or say something or think that it's a joke or be genuinely mad at their parent and like
Yes.
and not understand, not have the even the ability or the prefrontal cortex to understand the consequences of the possible actions, right? There's a lot there.
Absolutely.
You mentioned that CDE audits began focusing not only on funding, but also academic content and oversight. Why is this significant to you?
Well, that's significant because one of the buzzwords out there that you'll hear a lot is quality education,
Mm,
and they want to define that. Okay, even if they can't, I was talking to one of the legislators, they said, yeah, this is definitely an issue. They want to define what that means, and they would want to impose that on you as a family. This is what a quality education is. But do they want the public schools to follow it? No, they are failing kids every day because they
mm-hmm,
can't read or write or communicate
mm-hmm,
or do math.
mm-hmm.
But they want to impose it on you because they can control you. Oh, so many bills this year they passed. Okay, we're going to do this to businesses, but we're not going to do it because it costs too much money for us to implement it. I mean, this is the kind of stuff they do every day. And
Mm-hmm.
so for them to do that in education would not surprise me. They want control over us. So, so anyway, them focusing on content is important to them because they're using a lot of this content to mold the minds of our children in a certain direction. That's the history of public education and compulsory education. So,
Yeah, that's indisputable, right?
yeah,
So, but that goes back to my point earlier that I was fumbling with, having a hard time getting it out. They could say, "Oh, the curriculum that you're using is not quality education. Strike
they
against
could.
you. Not
That's
allowed."
right.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
Okay.
Yep.
It's disturbing.
Yes. Very.
Okay. Some people say if families are voluntarily taking public funding, increased oversight is reasonable. How would you respond to that?
Well, absolutely, it's reasonable. But does that mean that's something that you should seek to have if you really are talking about freedom? Because at the one point you're crying out, "I have freedom, my freedom," but then okay, that I'll give up some oversight for this. It's like, well, yeah, but now you don't realize what you're really giving up, right?
Mm.
All that data that they're collecting. And even what you said was disturbing that they're asking you for things in your independent school that they've never asked for before.
Oh, yeah, this is what I was going to mention earlier, and I forgot. The forms that districts now make
Yeah, don't fill them
for
out.
NOIs, nobody should ever be filling these out.
No,
I have been screaming this for
I
years.
know.
If they give you a form, do not do it. That is not what the law provides. And look at the form. They ask for so many things that are not included in the statute.
Right.
They ask for things that are none of their business. They're clearly people don't gather information unless they're doing something with it. Like everybody should
Yeah,
understand that
yeah.
right now. Nobody is innocently asking for personal information from your family to let it sit on a sheet and not pay attention to.
Right,
If they're asking for
exactly.
it, they're looking at it. If they're
Yeah.
asking for it, they're logging it, they're tracking it. So, and people
Well, and
might
so,
say, go
yeah,
ahead.
go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was like, people might say, well, it's not that big of a deal. It's like, I don't have anything to hide. At what point, when freedoms are taken away, have you ever seen it then just stop? Well, we're going to take away this much freedom and then we're not going to do it anymore. It always chips, it always edges more and more away. Like in
Yeah,
the history of Earth, when have they ever gone so far and then just stopped when they're removing freedoms?
exactly. Yeah, no, they won't. I mean, they have an insatiable hunger for our freedoms. And if we don't have the same, then, you know, we're going to lose it. But the thing is, when you go into these, when you fill out the NOI, if you go to a part-time program, you've got to fill out the form that they give you because you're going into that program. And so at what
Mhm.
point do you say, no, that's enough? There were a lot of bills that when I was lobbying for homeschooling, would get an amendment to exclude those homeschoolers who went into the part-time programs from them getting data on your mental health, because they wanted to do these assessments, which they've actually had to defund, so it's gone now. But I got an amendment on that to say, nope, you're not gonna do this to part-time homeschoolers. Now, whether they would fulfill the law or not, or even look at it, no, it's there. I don't know. But there were many days I was fighting just to keep data from them for these
Mm.
part-time school homeschoolers. But
Thank you for
really,
that.
we have no right to ask for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
They were gracious to give it to us. And that's the thing. You are now beholden to that government.
Thank you
So
for
anyway,
fighting battles like that when nobody even
thanks.
knew what you were doing, and for protecting kids from having data collected where their parents never even knew it was a threat. You're a silent warrior in a lot of ways, and I appreciate that. Yeah, it's a lot.
So, what they're moving toward, I mean, once they get out of high school, so you're no longer homeschooled, you're going somewhere and they're going to be collecting your data. And I
Mhm.
wish the homeschool community understood this idea of data and were the ones on the front lines pushing back against that, you
Mhm.
know. So that's kind of a hope I have.
Do you feel like things are so divided in Colorado that people who don't line up in political or, worldview ideologies dismiss the work you're doing just because you're a Christian?
Well, it depends. I mean, there was during the battle over Amendment 80, the school choice, putting that into the Constitution where they were trying to put homeschooling in there, which would lead to funding and just
Hmm.
overall control. Um, I allied with even the teachers union who didn't want it, right? Because they don't
Hmm.
want, because they knew this was going to give money to homeschoolers. We don't want that.
Right.
And I was made alliances with an atheist who we don't agree on anything else except for the fact that this is a bad deal. He
Hmm.
understood that. He would fight for all kinds of other stuff for homeschoolers, but not that.
Mm.
So, so there are alliances that can be made on that front of the control. I think people see it,
So,
but most people, they're not even aware of what's going on,
mhm,
that there is this battle over control. I think it's so easy to homeschool in Colorado. Our
mhm,
law, it gives the government some, feeling of, okay, we're doing something to watch these guys, we're requiring
mhm.
testing, they have to teach these classes. We've got some control over them. And, but now that all these part-time programs going crazy, they're going, wait a minute, maybe this is not exactly what we want. But I don't know where I was going with that. Sorry. I
It's
just
okay.
lost my train of thought.
It's okay. If you have
But
time,
anyway,
I could sit here with you all day long.
we're moderately regulated, which I think has
Yeah,
saved us from some of the bigger attacks. Like we'll be on the last rung of the attacks that are
yeah.
happening in some of the other states. I mean, we saw that New Hampshire actually opened up their homeschooling so that it's more free.
Hmm.
Well, I wish that would happen in Colorado, but until there's a heart change and a legislative, leadership, bureaucracy change, that's not going to happen. And
So
that
nobody
depends
should
on
hold
us,
their, yeah.
right? That depends on us. But that means we're in a position where we need to hold our ground. We can't give up ground. And that's my concern is these guys going into the part-time programs are giving up ground that we don't need to give up. And we can't
Mm-hmm.
afford to give up right now. So
Mm-hmm.
that's my concern.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Okay, let's address the
Okay.
other side, the other viewpoint. So many families genuinely rely on publicly funded programs for classes, therapies, labs, extracurriculars, and support they otherwise could not afford. What do you want those families to know?
Well, I want them to know a couple things. One is that just because it's free, there isn't some cost to it. There is a cost. You got to weigh that cost. The other thing is, I'm not judging anyone for using those programs. That's not my decision to make. It's your family's. But I want you to make a decision that's based in wisdom and truth. And you have all of the facts about what's going on with that program and the implications of it,
Mhm.
and that you make a wise choice. Um, and that's all I'm asking. I feel like a lot of people do it because, oh, I just need time. I'm going to send my kids there or whatever. So, or whatever reason, that it's not grounded in the need of that. If you really need that, I am not one to say no.
Mhm.
And even when parents disagree, I've been around talking, the mom wants to not put them in there, but the dad's like, no, you have to. Hey, don't. upset the apple cart to do that. Just pray, that you guys can come into agreement, whatever that is, and do what you need to do. It's just this explosive growth that has happened is not out of need
Mm-hmm.
because they've been gobbling. What happened was this particular BOCES was going around marketing themselves to private co-ops and saying, why don't you come under our umbrella and get government money? It'll be so much easier for you. That's not the right reason to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, that's kind of where I stand. I think people need to make that choice on a family basis
Yeah.
and know that there's a cost either way, and weigh that cost. You're sacrificing something either way.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Do you feel like Colorado has been so heavy dependent on these programs for so long at this point that people don't even understand or have a vision for more independent or autonomous homeschooling, as we refer to it, either like maybe they don't even understand or know that it's a thing and a way to do it in an old-fashioned way?
well, yeah, and I don't think it's because it's been going on so long. I think it's really because of the new group of homeschoolers that have come in,
Mm,
right? Like we were talking about earlier. They just don't have that vision, which is important for us to reclaim that vision of what homeschooling is really is. And I think you touched on it with the definitions, you
mm,
know, and how we talk about it and just throwing out homeschooling so flippantly. No,
mm-hmm,
I think we need to probably be more intentional in how we talk about it because it is a vision, I think, that's within, like the founders would say, there's a spark. All we have to do is flame it to this fire for liberty. If they knew what they were giving up by doing that,
mm-hmm,
would they still do it? But if you don't have a counter vision, look, this is why we started this whole movement of homeschooling, and this is where we're trying to go. Join us. And it needs to change, right? Each
mm-hmm,
generation has a different trajectory but we're all still going in that same trajectory of liberty, right? And family, because family is so important. It's being torn apart. That's what the socialists want. They have to get rid of family, and
mm-hmm,
they are tearing that apart every day. I mean, this whole movement of don't talk to your parents, you know,
mm-hmm,
um, that is growing. And how do we stop that? We need to reclaim the family as well. So, and I think people don't understand that's really what we wanted, right? We wanted this idea of God created the family to be a unit, that we're this, and we're a movement of change as a family. So anyway, but there is individuals too, individualities, which is what you're losing with the public school system,
mm-hmm,
because socialist is a commune,
mm-hmm.
but there is belonging in family, and they're stripping that away because they want them to belong somewhere else, this other group, which is the commune, the
Okay.
collective, right?
Can I
Does
can
that
I
make
play
sense?
it does
Anyway,
100%.
no, go ahead.
Absolutely.
Devil's advocate.
Can I play
Okay.
devil's advocate with you here for a minute?
Yeah, sure.
Because a lot of my families that are enrolled with my umbrella school aren't Christians. There's a
Right.
lot. There's a lot of homeschoolers that I support that aren't Christians that might hear you say that and like put up their guard and say, I'm done listening because this is coming from a Christian viewpoint. But how would you say, what would you want to say to people who are not Christians, who do not form their households on a Judeo-Christian foundation, who really don't care or might be, opposed to what the Bible says? How does this matter for their families? Why is family important for people who might even identify as socialists? Why is their homeschooling freedom and autonomy and their family important in their circumstance? Why is this
Well,
not
I
just a
think
Christian thing?
family, I mean, if you um, study any kind of sociology, I mean, family is the bedrock of a society, right? It's
Hmm.
the first institution of a society is the family. If it's not healthy, you're not going to have a healthy society. And so we all want that same thing. I mean,
Hmm.
even if you're an atheist, you love your children,
Hmm.
right? And it's because you're to, they're a part of you, part of your family, however you want to call it. Um, I think that's important. So I don't know. I think it's universal. It's a
Hmm.
universal principle of family. I don't think anybody, I don't think anybody realizes that that's what they want. But if you look at the Socialist Manifesto, that is what they want to do, is destroy
Hmm.
the family. But why?
Hmm.
Why? So that you have loyalty somewhere else. There is a loyalty that comes with family, we hope. But it's being broken apart, like this whole movement to not talk to your parents. I think when we're homeschooling, we're hoping that our kids will have that respect for our authority, but also a loyalty to us as family.
And to
I don't
know
know.
that nobody loves them the way we do. No one
Right.
understands them the way we do. Nobody will advocate for them the way they do, that we do. Nobody's going to take care of your kid nobody can take care of your kid, whether they're a newborn or whether they're 30 years old. Nobody understands a person the way their parents
Mhm.
do. And nobody can anticipate what they're going to do next the way a parent can do. Nobody can anticipate what they're going to need next or how they're going to respond to something. I don't care what anybody says, it's not possible. I mean, unless it's an absolutely abusive, neglectful parent, obviously we're not talking about things like that. But uh the thing
Well,
that
and the other thing, yeah,
go
when people, when you're saying, when you say, well, I reject that because it's a Christian value, I think it's more than that. When you look at Western civilization, which is what birthed freedom for
Mhm.
people, it's based on the Judeo-Christian principles. So I mean, you could, I guess, go to a tribal, society, and but that's still very different. You don't get the same freedoms. So I think we would need to recognize that. And I'm not, hopefully, people aren't reading me to push, God on them. I'm just trying to explain
Mhm.
how the systems are set up, right? And,
Sure.
and what's important for us to maintain.
Yeah,
That family is so crucial to
it
Western
is.
civilization, that understanding.
And it makes me sad that it's so divided that you would even have to say that or I would have to ask it. You know what I mean? But unfortunately, I feel like that's the reality of what we're living in and what we're
Yeah,
dealing with, especially and within the political climate within Colorado. I feel like it's I just feel like it's ugly. I feel like it's so divided. I hate it.
I know.
Okay, let's
Me
go
too.
on to the next one. Some families feel these programs expanded educational access and freedom rather than reduced it. Why do you see it differently? I guess we maybe don't even need to talk about that unless you want to.
Well, yeah, I mean, it does expand access, right? Um, but because I started on, just on the heels of the pioneering thing, I think they sacrificed so much just to secure the right not to send your child to the school and then wanting to go back there just seems counterintuitive. But do you also, and one other thing I wanted to mention is it's not just about data collection. It's about understanding what's really going on in that program. I mean, like if had to send someone, some of the newer programs that are doing things like we were talking about earlier, horse therapy, or some other things that are just niche kind of things, you might not see a lot of the worldview come through in some of these programs, but you need to keep your eye on these programs because these are supposed to be licensed teachers and their worldview is very different. At least they've been taught a worldview that's very different, whether they express it or not. So you need to be almost as vigilant about that. I would say you'd probably have to spend more time figuring out what's going on in that part-time program than you would at home, where you can send your kid off and go read a book and let's talk
Yeah,
about it later, right?
absolutely.
So you need to make sure that you're committing to making sure that you know exactly what's being taught in there. then why not
Yeah.
just teach it yourself? I
And
know
to,
some things you can't do yourself, right? I mean, I
Mhm.
did use some programs to try to do things that maybe I didn't want to do, like cake decorating or whatever. But those were private co-ops that we would join together and do that kind of thing.
Sure,
And
sure.
that's what we need. We need more innovation. I am all for innovation, creativity. I mean, innovation is born out of need, right?
Mm.
So if we need, that's the thing about this bill, if we need these things, then maybe we will innovate to get them
Well,
privately.
and yeah, like, why are we not? I mean, obviously, this is a conversation about publicly funded programs, but there's a whole aspect, like, I feel that, and let me back up. There are some parents that I see chattering on social that are like, all right, we're going to do this on our own. And I love it. And I advocate for them and I cheer them on and they should do it. Right. But there's a
Yeah.
whole lot where it makes me sad that I'm not seeing more of that because people are amazing. Like, just people fascinate
Yeah.
me. And they are equipped in different ways and people have different
Mhm.
talents and they have different interests and they can share so much with the world within their own little
Yeah.
communities or making a homeschool community, and it's so much more beautiful rather than going to a government institution and government funded program. And there are some good things. I'm not saying that there's not bad things. I'm just giving
Right.
one argument right now. I'm not trying to insult anybody, but there's something really beautiful that happens when a group of moms get together and they figure out what they're all good at and then they work together and then their kids develop really amazing friendships that can
Well, and
carry
that's what
them
I'm
a
talking
long
about,
time.
that
Yeah.
spark of liberty, which
Yeah.
spurs you on to do really creative and amazing things.
Without the red
That's
tape.
without all the control.
It's always better without red tape. It's always
Yes.
better when you can just make your own decisions and you don't have to go ask or wait for somebody to provide it for you. You don't have to get permission for it. You just do it. You just do the thing you want to do.
One of the things that we've seen because of these part-time program, the growth in the part-time programs is there's a co-op down here in the Springs that has had real difficulty finding a place to be able to hold their co-op because the prices that the churches now want or any private thing wants,
Right.
they want it to be commensurate with what funding they could get from a private, I mean, a public part-time program.
Yeah.
So the prices have gone up for the private because of the public. And that's what happens. That's what
Hmm.
happens. And that's what happens when they start controlling curriculum. The the market shrinks and you have less ingenuity and innovation and creativity and choices. So your choices diminish. I'm just saying. People claim I'm not pro school choice, but I am about real choice. Let's get real choice here.
The deepest freedom possible, right?
Yes,
That's it. The
absolutely.
critics of your position may say you're prioritizing philosophical concerns over practical family needs. How do you respond to that?
Well, I think I've already said that. You know, I understand that there's this need, especially when we're talking about the special needs kids. But then I think, wait a minute, you just got out of a system that you want to go back into or demand from. So I think it is somewhat philosophical, but I do give, credence to the practical as well. I'm not, like I said before, I'm not judging people who go into that program. I am just trying to warn you of what the implications are of this if a majority of people are using it. And if we really are in that situation, oh, we're going to have a hard time this next legislative session.
I would argue or try to paint the analogy of I can go to FedEx and ship something in their private company and I can count on it getting there in 2 days. Or I can go to USPS
Maybe get there.
and all bets are off.
Yeah.
Like where I live, we have a terrible time with our mail, and sometimes we get things
Mhm.
6 months later, and sometimes we just don't get it at all. Where I'm going with this is with my own son who had special needs. When I tried to use publicly funded programs, it was terrible and nothing happened. And there was no progress, and he was miserable, and I was miserable. But we were getting those forms saying that they were doing all the good things with him and checking all the things off his little box. And today we did this, and today we did that. And he wasn't making any progress. And when I said, you know what, we can do this better on our own, and I did the hard thing and I picked up some books, like big, heavy, expensive $200 books, and I just made myself sit down and read them so that I could understand what his needs were and what his situation was. And then I very carefully, and it had to be careful because I didn't have a lot of money to spend on it, but I very carefully then found private therapies to put him into. He turned around and made so much progress in a fraction of the time. So I would just say, as a
Wow.
word of encouragement to parents with kids with special needs who feel like they had to have to have some kind of public funded service to help your kids with special needs, just because it's publicly funded and they're being paid by a school district doesn't actually make them experts. There might be some, I'm not trying to insult anybody, but a lot of the people there aren't true experts in your child's special needs. And you can often, I would argue, the majority of the time, get much faster results and help your child thrive and have more peace in your family by going the private route to actually get at the heart of the matter and to be able to help your child.
Well,
That's
and they have requirements put on them that are not individualized for each child, right?
right.
So they're trying to meet all these things that they are required to do as well. And I think you pointed that out. And that is happening in everywhere the government has any control of any program. That happens
Yeah.
everywhere.
It's like USPS.
So,
It's not as good as private,
yes,
right? It's and
right.
and and I will tell you, I have had more conversations than I can count, and they all break my heart talking to parents of kids with special needs in public schools, and they are desperate to get their kids out. And I'm talking about stories of kids in wheelchairs and on feeding tubes who are nonverbal and who are pushed into a corner of the school and they're left there for the day. And then
Mm,
when they get their kid picked up, they say, we did the things. Or maybe it's a kid who's nonverbal and they are developmentally behind their peers for their age and they can't do academic work, but then their para holds a worksheet in front of them and they do the work or color or cross off the things. Today we did geography. Give me a break. Like this does not
mm,
count. These kids are not always being well
wow.
taken care of. Some programs are good and they're taking care of their kids, but there are a lot that are not. And I've had personal conversation with a lot of these parents and they're devastated and they're scared. And there's a lot more to what you see. And if you feel the pressure that you need a public school system to properly take care of your kids, I can tell you, you don't. You don't need it. You don't need it. Like
Yeah,
you're,
and that they definitely will exploit the special needs kids for that purpose. They get a lot more money for those
Mhm.
special, and sorry to say, but it is about how much money they're getting for
What
your
do, how do they
child.
make more money off of special needs than a regular
They get
head
more
count?
money from the feds and they give them more money for special needs because they have to have a para
Oh, yeah.
and other things. So there is a higher value on that.
Do you know what the
I
percentage is?
No, I don't know all the ins and outs of that, but I know they get more
That's
for
okay.
that.
Okay. Do you believe there's any healthy role for public partnership in homeschooling, or do you believe separation needs to remain clear?
Oh, I think it's good you asked this question because I wanted to point out you said public partnership, right? So this is
Hmm.
what we call a public-private partnership, PPP, right? That's crucial that we understand what's really going on here. That means the government controls the private entity, right?
And never vice versa.
And never vice versa, right? I mean, and the private entity will do it because they get money for
Right.
it, right? It's their, and usually they're bigger organizations that want to get up in these PPPs. But if you were to look at the UN and UNESCO, which is their education arm, they've put out papers on this before. How do we get a hold of private education? We need to get a hold of every form of education around the world. How do we get it? Especially in America, how do we get a
Mm.
hold of that? Well, we set up these PPPs, which means, government's funding every education form of education. So then we can create global citizens. And what they mean by that is not what you would want. Doesn't mean you're aware of what's going on globally. No, it's everybody thinking the same things and having the same values and beliefs. That's what they're talking about. So these PPPs, whenever you hear it, I'm like, that's just fascism. That's the government getting a hold of private industry and private entities. That's what that is. So no, I just don't think it's a good thing if you're going to get involved in that kind of stuff. I mean, there's a place where the government can't do a lot of things. It was so interesting this year. There was a bill, Senate Bill 80, that set up this program from cradle to career. They called it cradle to career to keep with the C's. They really want cradle to grave. They
Hmm.
want all this data on people, but not only that, is they want them involved in all kinds of PPPs, all kinds of government entities. They want to sell all their government programs, because that's really socialism. So that's what they wanted. They set up this program. Well, it was so interesting when it was in the education committee, I think it was the education committee, whatever committee, several committees it was in. The Democrats even said, wait a minute, this is the government telling private entities what to do. I'm like, what? You sound like a conservative. What's going on here? But they couldn't do it themselves because the government doesn't have the money to run the program. So when private entities are willing to couple themselves with the government, that destroys our liberty. It really does. They wanted to do it, the private entities wanted to do it because they were going to centralize these private entities. And guess what? One of them is going to come up on top. And they're just scrambling for the money.
Hmm.
So very interesting things in that front, but we need to stay away from that as best we can because you're losing your autonomy. Like you said, autonomous homeschooling. Those private entities are losing their autonomy. There's no other way around it.
So much of this, it reminds me of Big Brother. I think everybody should go back and read 1984 because
Yeah.
it's the language that's being used and where things are being hidden. There's, I'm going to skip back to our last segment that we were just talking about with knowing what's going on within the enrichment programs that your kids are in. Because there's one enrichment program that I know of that all of a sudden, out of nowhere, they brought in SEL, social emotional learning for people who don't know. And they were having the kids do exercises that would absolutely go against a lot of people's personal beliefs as Christians, as far as meditation and opening the mind up and things that the Bible specifically tells us not to do. And a lot of parents didn't even know. They had no idea. They had no idea that it was happening. They had no idea that these very simple, seemingly benign practices were going on that was literally a violation of their religious beliefs if they're following the Bible and trying to live according to what the Bible says. But they no clue because it's not defined. So just like the public partnership that you were just talking about, the PP, PPP, right?
P's. Yeah, three P's.
Um, Language is really important. And when they use language that doesn't seem dangerous, sometimes that's when it's the most dangerous. And we need to go back when my kids did speech and debate. The thing that I think probably I love the most about it that we're going to all carry through our lives is let's define our terms. What are we talking about and what do these
Yes,
words actually mean so that we're on the same page and we understand what's being said? Definitions are so huge. So
absolutely.
I wanted to circle back to
Absolutely.
that for
And
a
and
moment.
just on Cell, it was interesting. I saw a post on Facebook. A mom was asking, "Oh, can I go to the public school to do testing?" And this one mom answers and says, "Well, my kid gets tested 3 times a year at the part-time program." And I thought, no, they're doing SEL testing, which is not testing
Right.
for
Right.
academics. It is testing to move your values and your attitudes and beliefs in one direction. And
Hmm.
really, it's not just about what you were talking about. Um, it also undermines the family, different kinds of authority structures. It's thoughts about other things. It's not just against biblical values, it's against American value, Western civilization values,
Yeah.
truth claims. They
Mhm.
it is so bad. So So that's another thing you need to watch out for when you're putting your kid in is the content. That's what I was saying, the content. The SEL is a huge one.
It also
Huge.
collects information on the family. What does your family believe, or what do your parents believe about marriage? What are your family beliefs based on, insert in the blank? Are there guns in your home, right? Like there are big things being asked
Yes.
that parents may or may
And
not be
then they
aware
know
of.
how to tweak you. It's a mind altering program to
Hmm.
get you to believe a certain way. Because if you
Yeah.
see it enough, you will start to believe that way. You
Hmm.
are immersed in something that's against your family, and that's happening.
These next set of questions, I'm asking for you to respond, and I also asked for the other who's in favor of the publicly funded programs. What I'm going to do this time is I'm not going to talk and interject and have a conversation as much for the sake of time because I've taken up so much of your time. So I'll just be quiet and let you respond. So the first one is this: what do you believe people on the other side of this issue misunderstand most about your position?
I think it's a couple things. I mean, I'm accused of not wanting what's best for people, of not supporting school choice, of not allowing people to exercise their freedom. And I think I've made it clear that I think it is individual families' choices, right? That I do support choice. I want real choice. But if everything's controlled by the government, that's not real choice. Even if it's a little bit here and a little bit there. We are seeing now that it's going to be more. So watch out. I am not against that. And I want people to exercise their freedom. And it's how again, it's how you define it, what you said. Freedom's not just a word. You have to have agency to exercise it, right? And it's very important to me. It's very important to me. I mean, homeschooling is really all about freedom. And we're coming up on our 250th anniversary and 150 for Colorado. And I think it's important that we revisit that. What really is freedom and choice? And so that's what I would say to the people. And I guess I was thinking about, the vaccine fight that we were in, right? For them, the government coming in and trying to control all of that, which they are doing in certain ways. In Colorado, I saw something the other day. If you have a special needs kid and you're in a certain program, you have to be vaccinated. I mean, that's just crazy. But the thing was, when I first had my kids, I believed the doctors. I did all of that. I followed, I was a good parent and did all that until I knew what the truth was. And then I said no more and had to fight for that freedom. And I think we're at this point where I'm just want to challenge the homeschoolers to understand um, it's that same thing. You need to see everything that's going on, not just your little corner of to make you, satisfied. You need to look at the bigger picture here because that's what we're talking about. Freedom is a big concept and it's always something you have to fight for. So anyway, that's my answer for that one.
The
I
only
could
thing
go
I want
on,
to,
but yeah,
yeah, the only thing I have to add to that is what are we setting up our kids for? And what
that
freedoms
is
do we
true.
want our children to have for our grandchildren and for our own personal legacies? And what does freedom mean? Not just what does it mean to you in an ideal, but what does it mean in living out your life and teaching your children how to live out their lives and how to make their decisions for autonomy in every aspect, not
Yes,
just education, but over their
right.
bodies, over their minds, over their finances, over their futures, their career choices, all of those things. It's all encompassing. So, sorry, I'm going to not add any
Nope,
more to keep it
go
short.
on. No, you're good.
Okay. Some families feel publicly funded programs made homeschooling possible for them financially or logistically, while others believe government funding will always eventually lead to increased oversight and regulation. How do you personally weigh those competing concerns?
Yeah, and I think we've talked a lot about this already, right? But I'll just add that I do think every family's different, and I respect that for sure. But I want to just challenge you to say, is there another way? You did that. You said there's got to be another way. I'm going to find it. seek out those other ways if possible. So it's hard to weigh those. You have to do that personally. I can't. There is this one story, I guess, when I was in New York, we were homeschooling. I had twins. And in New York, when you have twins, they track you from birth, right? So they want to make sure these twins are thriving. So they would send me these surveys every few months to make sure they were on track developmentally. At one point, my son wasn't on track developmentally, so they started sending people to my home. It was a speech therapist and an occupational therapist. So, okay, fine, I would work with them. I mean, this was in my period of, okay, I'm going to do what people tell me to do. I don't know what I'm doing, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I did that. And when he became 5, it was time, you know, that the compulsory age was 5. So let's go to school. They said, we want him to come to school. You need to send him to school. I'm like, I don't want to send him to school. Um, and so I had to go in and meet with the school people, the school, I don't even know who they were, the administrators, the counselors, I don't know. It was a whole group of them. It was like 5 of them. My OT said, I'll come with you. I'm like, thank you, because it would have been me against like 5 of them.
Yeah.
She went with me in there and she said, look, she's fine. She could actually do this herself. She could become an OT. Just leave her alone, you know, kind of thing. So she advocated for me. And I guess that's what we need to find too, a community that's going to advocate for us
Mm.
um, amongst our own group and come up with better solutions. Is there another way? Is there another way? Soon after, I mean, a couple of years after that, we left New York, but
Yeah.
that's where we're headed, right? I mean, they don't do that here now. They don't have the money like New York does.
Mm.
Again, thank you, Taxpayer Bill of Rights. We must
Mm-hmm.
preserve it because that's the way they'll get us. So be careful. So
So protect that taxpayer bill of rights at all
protect
costs,
that taxpayer.
because that's what's standing in the way of.
That's what's standing in the way of big
Think
government.
how bit much the taxes would go up without that there to start funding all the things that they would want to
Yes,
do.
and there will be a ballot measure that will try to take your Tabor refunds for K-12 and
Mm-hmm.
other programs. Just
Mm-hmm.
know it's not just education, it's other programs within
Mm-hmm.
education.
I'm not going to do the last one. I want to choose
Okay.
one from the practical guidance, if that's okay.
Yep.
Gosh, which one do you think is better? What questions should families ask themselves before deciding to file an NOI to access publicly funded programs? Or what practical steps do you think Colorado homeschoolers should take right now? Which one of those do you think is better?
Well, I can just do them real quick.
Okay.
So the questions that I would ask is, what is the cost to enrolling my student in this program? So there is a cost. We talked about that. There's some cost, whether it's to your family, family time, whether it's ideology, whether it's worldview, whatever it is, there's a cost. And then what benefit will my student gain that cannot be gained anywhere else? Can't get it
Mm,
anywhere else. What is that? And who is benefiting from my student's enrollment in that program? Who benefits? Because remember, it's about money. Somebody's benefiting from it. Who is that? Okay, so then the practical steps on what can we do now? I think people are calling for, the governor to veto. That's not a possibility because this is a mandated bill that he has to pass. And what I went back and listened to the amendment that got brought to this bill on the floor, there was an original amendment that came out. I never saw that original amendment, but I think that was the one the governor didn't like. So I think the amendment got to a place where it was palatable to him because really it's just about them figuring out, okay, we need to control these. He doesn't have a problem with them controlling the part-time
mm-hmm,
programs.
mm-hmm.
So I think he was okay with that amendment. And so it's fine. Don't worry about that. But do worry about when they come out with the rules for that part-time program. We're going to need to look at that and see, because that will be, like we had talked about earlier, the indicator in what kind of data they really want from all of us. So let's see what happens with those rules. That'll be from August through December. That's when the State Board of Ed will be talking about those. They meet once a month for a couple days. And so just tune in if you can, or listen to people and figure out what's going on. There's that one bill that's collecting data for the Joint Budget Committee when they're going to decide about funding. That report is supposed to come out in November. Pay attention to what that says. see what they're saying. There's some election issues. I talked about this K-12 ballot initiative. It's going to take away Tabor because they need more education money. And for all really for mental health programs and all kinds of other programs that have nothing really to do with education. So watch out for that. And then see what's coming up with the legislation in 2027. So that's just, short term. This is what we need to be paying attention to.
Okay. Can I
But
ask
long
you?
term, definitely educate yourself. Get educated on what's the history of education, what's the history of the homeschool movement. What's where do they want education to go really in our country? So
That's big. Can I ask a question
yeah,
for clarification? So my understanding is, correct me if I'm wrong. Tell me if I'm not processing this right. This all goes into effect July 1 for the 26-27 school year, as far as needing to file a notice of intent in order to enroll in a publicly funded program, right?
that is true.
So what they're going to do is people are going to do their NOIs, they're going to start their publicly funded programs, then the data collection starts happening at that point. Then CDE meets between August and November, and then they can take the data that's been collected and then they decide what rule changes they want to make at that point, or will they not have access
No,
that
you
fast?
mean the data is different. The data that they're collecting with the one bill, I think it's 1428, is different than them doing rules. The reason why there's this I mean, this bill will go into effect, and some of what it says is you can't go to a part-time program if you're enrolled in an independent school, right? So
Right.
that's just flat out, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then it says CDE, you need to make rules around these part-time programs, okay? And how are we going to certify them? What kind of regulations do we want them to follow? That's a process. Right now, what they've said in this bill is, hey, there are programs already in existence. Those programs, okay, we will let you provisionally do it for this next year if you get certified.
Mm,
And that process, that application for certification has to be done by July. So
okay.
they'd have to apply for that. And it depends what that application says. Some of the problem with the one BOCES is they were siphoning into the government funding programs that were not within the districts that they were a part of.
Mm-hmm.
So those schools might be more in danger because the law now says you have to get permission from the district you're in, even if
Mm,
you're under this BOCES that's
mm-hmm.
multi-county. So see, there are two different processes at work
Mm-hmm.
because it takes them time to come up with rules.
Sure. So the
They were,
rules would go ahead.
yeah, they were already looking at rules for homeschooling anyway because of the funding situation.
So would the rules
So
that they implement go into effect immediately or in the 27-28 school year?
um, I think it would be the 27, 28.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Okay.
But some of it, yeah. So they're kind of giving them this grace year, and then they're going to really put the hammer down.
All right.
You're a part of a part-time program, or run one, especially if you run one, you better be paying attention to those rules and follow them, because I don't know that they'll ask for back funding, like if they gave you money and you weren't supposed to because you weren't following the rules.
Mm,
But you never know.
sure. That's big. That is not a position I would want to be in.
So be careful. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you. Keep your ears out. And when people are
Yeah,
talking
there
about
you go.
Carolyn Martin, listen. Thank you for all of your time.
Yeah. Well, thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Thank you, Carolyn. Have a great day.
Thanks. You too.
Thanks for
Bye-bye.
all you do for us. Bye.
Bye.